simple is best.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, welcome to another installment of Method Book Monday. Today I decided to talk about Pedal to the Kettle, Dr. Kurt Gay's timpani book. If you're from Florida and you're a percussionist, you've probably played a solo out of this book because it's always the all-state timpani etude. So as I was getting ready to break down this book and talk to you guys about it, I thought, well, I know someone who knows how to play timpani a lot better than me. FreePercussionLessons.com, Mr. Andrew Proctor, yes, that's my father, and he's the timpanist for the Palm Beach Opera Orchestra down in South Florida. So I thought I would give him a chance to talk about some of the method books for timpani that he likes to use, that he grew up with, and that maybe he uses for whatever students he has or in his practice time now as a professional timpanist. Through our quick talk off camera, he's not too familiar with Dr. Kurt Gay's book. I'll give it off to FreePercussionLessons.com, Mr. Andrew Proctor, talk about some of the books he likes and maybe why.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Eric. You can tell this is a well-worn book. I've had this for 100 years or so. It's Saul Goodman's Modern Method for Timpani. This is the etude book and the studies book that I learned throughout high school and continued to use through college and as a professional. This book is geared towards playing orchestral timpani repertoire. So all of the techniques that Goodman focused on, the exercises and the etudes, lent themselves towards playing Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, Stravinsky, etc. through the ages of classical music. So that was his focus. So I use this a lot. I continue to teach out of that. The etudes are suitable for college entrance. They're short, and for a lot of college applications, a short timpani etude is all that's expected.
Right.
So you don't need to have a 3-page timpani concerto ready when you're coming out of high school into most music programs. Some advanced conservatory programs might expect a little bit more. But most of the middle and advanced etudes out of this book are perfectly fine for most college entrance situations.
On that point, I wanted to take a quick segue back to Pedal to the Kettle. Consensus that I'm getting is the past timpani books and maybe the Goodman and allow the student to really focus on the musical aspect and ear training specifically and tone quality and of the beast of which is timpani, right? And from my experience as a percussion educator and as a student, I found Pedal to the Kettle was a lot of fun, but it's certainly, if you're not really reading everything that's in this book and you're not taking parts of the book outside and breaking them down on your own, then you end up, unfortunately, starting to look at timpani as 4 tom-toms, which is not good. So I've found some of these other books really get the student to kind of start thinking of timpani as its own beast, as tonal and more musical.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The last thing you want as a timpanist is to sound like you're playing tom-toms. That's the worst. So if you're dealing with a solo, and if you're a young timpanist and you're trying to tackle something that's too advanced for you technically, you may fall into that trap of hitting all the right notes and all the right rhythms, but that's really a minuscule aspect of being a good timpanist. It's more important to be able to play musically, and there are some good books. The Vic Firth book, The Solo Timpanist. It's for an advanced player. You have to have a couple of years under your belt and really know some technical aspects to playing timpani before you can tackle that one well. In addition to a terrific book that I've always enjoyed playing and teaching with is the Alexander Lepak 32 Solos for Timpani. These etudes are extremely musical and focus on developing ear training. I'll tell you an anecdote. When I was in college, I struggled with ear training. It was my worst subject ever.
Me too.
It was just, it, I, my high school career did not prepare me for the university ear training program that was very far advanced for, in Quebec, where I studied. I went to high school in Ontario, and they just didn't have the music program. When I got to Quebec, Montreal, the expectations for ear training were light years ahead of where I was. So it took me a long time and a lot of concentrated effort to get up to those standards. In fact, I think there were 4 semesters. It took me 8 semesters to complete all of my ear training obligation. But because of that and the extra time that I needed to spend with it, I know that my ear training and my pitch recognition really became very advanced. And that's always one thing that I can rely on as a timpanist, is always the ability to play in tune. And I'm fortunate enough that a lot of the orchestras I play with recognize that. This book, the Lepak, really emphasizes that. Allows you to play in tune. Another collection of etudes. This is the 30 etudes by, I don't have the cover on it anymore, by Jacques Delecluse. There's a, this book starts at 21, and there's another book that goes from 1 to 20.
Okay.
So I don't happen to have that one with me. But these etudes, along with the Lepak, are very musical in nature. And that's more important when you're, to me, than playing a lot of busy notes. You want to find music that allows you to express yourself as a musician, not just as a fast hands drummer.
Right.
Because fast hands drummers don't always sound the best on timpani. You know, in fact, a lot of young timpanists try to play too fast, and their sound suffers.
Right.
You know, speaking about developing a timpani roll.
Right.
I have a lot of exercises on freepercussionlessons.com that focus on the development of proper rolling technique. And it all comes down to even-handedness. Being able to play exactly the same sound with the right hand as you do with the left hand. Being able to switch from drum to drum and not putting in unwanted accents, harsh tones. Everything needs to have a good sound no matter what you're playing.
Right.
So I use a set of exercises developed by the former timpanist of the Montreal Symphony, Louis Charbonneau. He published a 4-page exercise for timpani that's very, very challenging if you approach it correctly.
Right.
If you don't approach it correctly, you're going to look and say, well, that's just half notes and quarter notes, and this is boring, and I can play this in one afternoon sight reading.
Right.
If you take that approach, you'll never become a timpanist, plain and simple. But if you look at an exercise like that, the simpler exercise, and you learn how to play it musically and perfectly, you will become a much better timpanist. In fact, the saying goes that if you can play a Beethoven symphony, you can play anything on timpani. Beethoven symphony usually is 2 drums,
Right.
2 notes,
Yeah.
very little. You might change pitches between movements in a couple of later symphonies. But to be able to play the intricacies that Beethoven wrote between 2 drums is very difficult. And to be able to understand the entire symphony while you're playing your 2 drums
Right.
is the biggest challenge. So simple is best.
My father, Andrew Proctor, with freepercussionlessons.com. He's the timpanist for the Palm Beach Opera Orchestra. This was another Method Book Monday, and just to wrap it all up, we were focusing on Pedal to the Kettle by Dr. Kirk Gay. This is a good book, and it's a great way to get your students to be introduced to timpani in a fun way, especially if they have a heavy marching band background and they're getting good at tenors, their chops are getting up there. This is a good way to get them to sit at the timpani and learn some pretty musical solos. At the beginning of the book, he goes through what timpani are, how to properly play them. There's a lot of good copy in here for those students. But after talking with a professional timpanist, we learned a couple of other good books that focus maybe a little bit more on the musicality side of timpani that can get lost, especially today. All right, so we have the Goodman book, and again, all these will be in the description below. We have the Delacluse and Lepak solos. These are really good musical pieces to work on those nuances that is super important for timpani players.
Don't forget Vic Firth Solo Timpanist.
And Vic Firth Solo Timpanist. That is also a really good book. That is my fault because, again, I pretty much use all of his books through college, and I'm pretty sure that one's on my bookshelf right now. So, thanks for checking this out. Stay tuned next week for another Method Book Monday. If you have a special request on any instrument that you want a method book suggested, comment below, send me an email. Thanks for watching. Happy practicing.
See you later.